Let's go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us to celebrate ELPC's successes. Take a look at Lake Michigan. Take a look at the beautiful city of Chicago. That's what we work every day to protect. We protect our Great Lakes. We work to improve the environment for people and communities. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, for joining us tonight. We greatly appreciate your leadership, what you're accomplishing for Illinois, and we're going to have a fun and interesting conversation in a few minutes. Although Tom Skilling was unable to join us this evening, he promised good weather. We got it. Tom is on the way to recovering to good health, and we'll be doing something with Tom in the near future. I was recently with Vice President Kamala Harris, and she said something that really struck me. What she said is, this is not a moment to throw up our hands. This is a moment to roll up our sleeves and get things done. And that's what the ELPC staff does every day. Roll up our sleeves, get things done, protect vital natural resources, promote sustainable transportation, advance clean energy and climate change solutions here in Illinois and around the Midwest. And I could talk all evening about ELPC's incredible work. Don't worry, I won't. I'll talk about the elephant in the room. Every 4 years we hear, this is the most important election ever. But truly this time, the choices are stark. We have a presidential candidate who's a convicted felon, who's asking oil company executives to give him $1 billion, and in exchange, if he gets elected, he'll roll back all the regulations and deregulate the industry. We have a Supreme Court majority that's hostile to our values. But we also have leaders like Governor Pritzker, Governor Whitmer, Governor Walz, stepping up in the states with policies to protect the environment and to accelerate clean energy. And I want to assure you one thing about ELPC. We're strategically planning for November. We're ready to keep fighting. We're going to keep winning. We're going to have a plan A and a plan B that I hope we never have to get to. But we'll be prepared for whatever November brings. Because we work in 9 Midwestern states as well as Washington, D.C., and we can shift our attention to the state opportunities when the federal government's hostile, and vice versa. And for example, when the federal government was hostile a few years ago, we were able to work with bipartisan majorities in Congress to push back and to continue to protect and restore the Great Lakes. So a little bit of good news and some great news. 4 real quick ELPC project highlights, all right? First, our innovative power plants to parklands and renewable energy. What we're doing is that coal plants are shutting down all over the Midwest and all over the country, and all of them are on lakes and rivers. That valuable lakeshore and riverfront property has been behind utilities' gates and fences for years. People don't even really know it's there. There's a once-in-a-generation opportunity as the coal plants shut down on the Great Lakes, and we're working in Michigan on this, to recapture that lake shore, recapture the riverfront property, turn it into parks, greenways where people can hike and bike, shoreline where people can boat and fish and kayak and canoe and just play in the outdoors. At the same time, these plants are already hardwired into the electricity grid. One plant, there's proposed 750 megawatts of energy storage. Another plant, 450 megawatts of battery storage is already about to go up. Another plant, 100 megawatts of solar. That's about 300,000 solar panels. That's a lot of jobs. So power plants to parklands plus renewable energy, we're close to announcing the first deal with utilities and community partners in Michigan. Bravo to the ELPC team. Jill Geiger. Where's Rebecca Lowy? Kelly Thayer, former Congressman Andy Levin. This is a win-win-win formula. You've heard that from me before, win-win-win. It's good for parks, good for clean energy, good for sustainable economic development. It's a national model that if we get it right going in Michigan, it can be replicated at plants here in Illinois, around the Midwest, and nationally. Second, take a look down the shoreline. That's where the Army Corps of Engineers is proposing to build a toxic dredge waste dump on the lakefront in the Southeast Side Environmental Justice Community, an area that's already overburdened with toxic pollution. That lakefront site was promised to be restored into a park. When the community asked for our help, ELPC filed a lawsuit to stop the Army Corps' misguided plans. We won the first battle in federal court. We forced the Corps to hold off from build now, permit later. The Illinois EPA has denied all 3 state water quality permits. They haven't made the case. The Army Corps hasn't made the case on the facts why it makes sense to do this on the lakefront in an environmental justice community. The Chicago Tribune recent editorial said it all. Here's the headline: "Stop this proposed tower of toxic waste on Chicago's Lake Michigan shoreline." You don't get an editorial better than that. So let's recognize our terrific community clients and partners, Amalia Nieto Gomez of the Alliance of the Southeast, and Jen Kilgore of Friends of the Parks. And bravo, ELPC attorneys Daniel Abrams, Alana Reynolds, Judith Nemes, David McEllis. Let me say it in one sentence. The lakefront is for people in parks, not for toxic waste. Third, you might not know about the Sand Lake National Wildlife Refuge in South Dakota. 21,000 acres, a vital stopover for migratory birds. It's been designated a globally important bird area. It's a wetland of international importance. Right? The refuge manager decided that it was okay to sort of create an exemption from the statutes that are designed to protect national wildlife refuges so that some pipelines could go through it. ELPC stepped up, filed some comments explaining why that was illegal. Within about 2.5 months, the regional director of the Fish and Wildlife Service said, ELPC, thank you for your comments. You're right. 180-degree reversal of position. They withdrew the illegal proposal. So bravo, Nick Wallace, ELPC attorney back there. Where's Scott Heideprem, ELPC board member from South Dakota? Fourth and finally, ELPC attorneys and technical experts are engaged before public utility commissions across the Midwest. Picture a hearing room that's only slightly more charming than the New York courtroom where Donald Trump has been for the last whatever number of weeks. These utility commission rooms, however, are where the very arcane rules of the road that govern public utility rates and policies get decided. And that's where it's decided whether there's a modernized distribution grid that's better for solar energy, whether rates are fair, and whether to accelerate climate solutions or not. The rules that are set in the 1- and 2-year hearings make a difference for decades. Bravo, ELPC Clean Energy leader Brad Klein, Rob Kelter. They and their team are doing the heavy lifting and getting it done. Let me wrap up. Whether these cases and issues take several months or several years, ELPC is here to do the right thing. We don't throw up our hands. We roll up our sleeves. We develop sound strategies. We play to win. We get things done that make a real difference. That's what we do. Our Great Lakes, our treasured Midwest landscapes, and the future of our planet when it comes to climate change deserve no less. So thank you all who partner, who support, who work with the ELPC. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you're going to continue to do. And let's work together. Let's make a difference for people, our communities, and our planet. Thanks for being here tonight. And with that, let me introduce my board member, good friend and colleague, William McNary. Thank you, William.
Well, good evening. My mom always said you could tell what kind of a crowd you're standing in front of by the way they greet friends or by the way they greet strangers when they greet you. So let's try that again. Good evening. Good evening. Now that's more like it. You all do my mama proud. Howard, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I am elephant elated, hippopotamus happy, and peacock proud to have the honor of introducing our special guest. He is a proven leader who is committed to racial and social and economic and environmental justice. He does more than just give lip service to protecting the environment. He takes action. He understands that protecting the environment is like Howard Lerner always says, I think he said it again tonight, is a win-win-win. It's good for our health. It provides good quality, high-paying jobs, and it's also good for economic development. He is a governor that has signed landmark legislation that put Illinois on the path toward 100% clean energy. He's also advancing climate change solutions. He's encouraging clean, renewable energy development. He's accelerating electric vehicle infrastructure and jobs and protecting the Great Lakes and much, 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 much more. You know, there's a lot of talk in D.C. and Springfield about values, but we have a morals-based document in government that reflects our values. It's called a budget. President Joe Biden likes to say, show me a person's budget and I'll show you their values. In Pritzker's budget, we've gone from credit deficits to credit upgrades. We've gone from unpaid bills to fully funded services and paid vendors. We've gone from a rainy day fund that had $48,000 in it to a current rainy day fund of $2 billion. And in a state with infinite needs, but finite resources, this is a governor and legislature. By the way, all politics is local. My legislator, my senator is here. Lakeisha Collins, stand up so people can see you, baby. And just go a little bit more local, just quickly. My wife is here. Sheila McNary, stand up so they can see you too. Thank you so much. All right. Sorry, Mary Frances. I'll be quicker. I'll take them out of my remarks. But in addition to that, he funds human services with much needed raises this year to home health care and disability service providers. He's provided evidence-based education funding to low-income and underserved schools. He's provided MAP grants for low-income college students, and he provides more funding to his initiative for early childhood education. And finally, on our health care protection front, he passed the Health Care Protection Act, which bans low-quality junk insurance plans and outlaws prior authorization services, which allows the insurance companies to stand between their doctor and their patient. No longer will we be denied necessary treatments. Stand by, more to come. Lastly, you like that word? You like that word, don't you? Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "We are prone to judge success by the index of our salaries or by the size of our automobiles, rather than by the quality of our services, relationships to humanity." Oh, and yes, Governor Pritzker has a pretty big wallet, but he also has a bigger heart. Not only to serve the 13 million people here in Illinois, but beyond. Let me quote him. "Let me be clear. While other states may be treating people as pawns, here in Illinois, we're treating people as people. The governor of Texas is choosing not to notify us when he is sending us busloads of families, but here in Illinois, we will provide food and shelter and health care to the children, the women, and the men that need it. I am honored to call this man my governor. I am proud to call this man my brother, and I'm humbled to call this man my friend." Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm ELPC welcome to the current governor of the state of Illinois and the future president of the United States of America. Future. Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Thank you, my friend. You're going to get me in trouble. McNary. He's going to get me in trouble. That's all I can say. Thank you, William.
I learned a long time ago, always speak before William, not after William McNary. All right. And just because William recognized Dr. King, let's recognize Jonathan Eig, Pulitzer Prize winner, good friend, for his book on King. All right, Governor, thank you for joining us on a beautiful evening. You're on a run. You worked long, hard to get electric vehicles to Illinois. Rivian in Normal, Goshen in Manteno, in Belvedere, Stellantis. Everything you've been doing has finally paid off and it's moving forward that way. You've had a legislative session that's gone pretty well, had a rocky end, but I think you got most of your agenda through the legislative session. Let's start with the question that everybody here wants to hear, because we've all been reading the news articles. They're creating a buzz, JB for 2028. What do you want to tell us about it?
That's how you want to begin? Could be a long and terrible evening for you. Thank you.
You can take that one however you want to take
Just
that.
checking. My wife's not here. Okay. No, let me first of all, thank you for the compliment of, and thank you to William for saying as you did. Look, it's flattering, of course, to be talked about as somebody who might run for president, but shouldn't we be talking about, the governorship? We have no term limits in Illinois, but the governorship is up in 2026. Shouldn't I be talking about that? And isn't
That'd
that
be
the
good
question?
too.
I
I think that's a good question.
I have no immediate answer for that question, or the other one that you asked. Other than I want to go back to what we're facing this year, because it is no minimization to say once again that this is the most important election of our lifetimes. And yes, we all didn't know it in 2016, I don't think. I mean, we just couldn't imagine that it would go the way that it went, many of us anyway. 2020 was the most important election of our life. Maybe 2018 was the most important election of our lifetime. 2020, 2022, I mean, I'm sure everybody here hates to hear it over and over again, but it has been true every single time, and it is true again in 2024. We cannot lose for all of the reasons that ELPC exists. We cannot lose. And I hate to say this, but it feels to me, and I grew up going to shul every Sunday, Sunday school. I sometimes joke that I saw a Holocaust movie every Sunday. It's not true, but it felt like it sometimes. I helped to build a Holocaust museum, so I have a frame of reference anyway that makes me think it's 1933 in Berlin. And that's how serious this election is. That's how important this election is. So it's hard to look beyond 2024 because even though I don't think this is the message we should be knocking on doors and telling people to get them to get out and vote, I do think this is true, which is democracy is on the line. I don't think it gets people out to vote to say that at their doors. People are worried about, whether they're going to be able to keep their job, how much money they're going to make, whether they can send their kids to college, and so on. But it is the most important election of our lifetime. It's because democracy is on the line. So that's what I'm focused on. I've been traveling around the country for President Biden, doing everything that I can to support his re-election, to Kamala Harris's re-election. And I encourage all of you, you're obviously here because you care deeply about what ELPC does. We're going to move backward, I hate to tell you. Yes, you're going to have a plan B, and we're all going to be on plan B if we had to. But we are going to move backward if the wrong person wins the election.
All right. Talk a little bit, if you would, about priorities for the next 2 years. The environment, natural resources protection, clean water. What are you looking at getting done in the next 2 years of your governorship?
It's a much more positive question to ask.
We gave your staff these questions in advance.
Well, they didn't tell me, so well, let me start with, we are on a trajectory that is very positive, and we have much more to do. There's no doubt about it, but we have made real progress. It was a year and a half of working groups to lead up to CEJA in 2021, and I got elected in 2019. We immediately joined the U.S. Climate Alliance because the Paris Accords had been done away with by the then president, and CEJA was the most important thing that we could get done for the state, but it took a long time and a lot of effort, and I'm looking at the legislators. I see Teresa Ma in the room, of course, Senator Collins here. I'm sure I'm missing people, but a lot of people who really put their shoulder to the wheel, and it's a hard thing to do, I might add, because there are a lot of interests who want to do the right thing, but there are jobs at stake, and you're talking about the broader economy and so on. So I'm highlighting CEJA because we have to execute on CEJA. We're still doing it. It's 2021 it came and went, but all of the goals that we set and all of the work that needed to be done is still, on the task list and calendar items, so to speak, that we have to go at. And I'm a project person. I really believe in, that's kind of how I work on things. It's a project, and everything, every bill, every policy goal, it's a project. And CEJA is a long-term project. We have goals that we have to meet, 2030, 2036, 2045. We have things we need to do. So I'm raising that as you're asking me, like, what are the goals for the future? How about if we execute well on the things that we already have set in motion? Now, you may want to separately talk about this, but you mentioned a number of things that are ongoing issues that we face today. The Calumet Harbor issue is just one of them. But these are all things that we have to safeguard against. I would also give you you all remember the challenge in Willowbrook not long ago. It was just one company that we were all focused on, but those are major issues that come before us that if we don't solve them properly, you're going to end up with problems in communities all across the state of Illinois. So I guess making sure that we have an EPA that is funded, and I'm talking about an Illinois EPA that's funded and doing the job, which I don't think we're there yet on the funding, but it's doing the job, right. and much better than it was, I would argue, in 2018 and before.
Agree.
And that is communicating with and listening to the environmental justice community and ELPC and others in a way that it hasn't ever done before.
Kudos to John Kim on that.
Indeed, and I don't think people thought John Kim was going to be the perfect guy for this job. And maybe he's not perfect, but I will tell you that when we brought him in, it was really, there were people who didn't think that we should hire somebody who had been at the EPA before to lead the EPA. But he was the one guy who really understood how to take us into the future and also ratchet down the power that was being exerted upon the EPA by so many businesses that don't have an interest in preserving the environment. So I'm very proud of the work that he's done. I hope that we can keep it, people, by the way, I'm 5.5 years into office. You can imagine there are people that have been with me since the beginning and before who at some point they think, I got to go make some money. We're not making enough money working in government, or they want to, they get offers incoming. And I never know, of course, when that might happen. But I pray that being able to keep good people in the jobs, good people that are doing a good job in those jobs, through the rest of my term, whether it's ends in 2020, early 27 or beyond. So anyway, we have a lot more to do, but I just wanted to say, making sure we execute on the job that we've set for ourselves now may be the most important thing.
Talk about some of the thorny problems. For example, in implementing CEJA, terrific appointments, Doug Scott, Ann McCabe, over at the Illinois Commerce Commission. But you take, and I mean it, take something like building decarbonization. On the one hand, the statute says we're going to decarbonize. On the other hand, you have People's Gas wanting to build literally billions of dollars of more pipelines, and the rate shock is getting pretty bad. How do you navigate between those two? What's the transition point of saying enough is enough to people's and some of the labor unions that want to keep the jobs? Yep. But on the other hand, moving toward where CEJA wants to go.
Well, I'm glad you said it because all the things that we were talking about with CEJA, it was work to reach some compromise. And I raise this because when you talk about ICC, I appointed every person on the ICC. It's a bipartisan commission. I appoint all of them. You know, the Republicans are real Republicans, but they're also people who understand, and I interviewed each one of them for the job myself, and they all understand that the decisions they make today on decarbonization, the decisions that they make today about infrastructure build by existing utilities affect consumers in a massive way and affect whether or not we're going to be able to achieve our goals for CEJA. So having great people, you know, and by the way, I have to appoint so many people to so many positions. You know, let's face it, you can't get it right every time. You try your best. But I do think this ICC is very good. And yeah. And so on the question of building pipeline, I think, look, we want to create jobs, absolutely. And we want good paying union jobs. And I'm committed to that broadly, in general, across the board. I also believe that we can't compromise our health and safety going forward. Thinking about the short term will do that. If we, you know, there are compromises you can make now that will make sure that you have jobs for the next few years. But the reality is that the jobs that you can create if you think with a long-term lens are much greater. And good jobs for the very people that today are arguing against what the ICC is doing. So I'm very proud of the direction that the ICC is taking, but understand that they're going to have, you know, the future of gas proceeding is going to be hugely important, because this issue is not one of those easy ones where, you know, we all want to raise our hand and say, you know, we want to get to where we want to be quickly. It isn't going to happen as quickly as we all would like, and what it's going to require is very careful planning, because environmental justice communities deserve that, as well as the poorest communities. Some of them are the environmental justice communities, but the poorest communities need to be thought of at every discussion that the ICC has, because otherwise we're going to do the right thing for the environment, but not the right thing for people to survive. You know, and so I want to make sure we're managing all of that well, and I think ICC, again, is the right place for this to happen with the people that have been appointed to it.
Good. And bravo, really, on your, you talk about project management, in effect, and getting things done. You've put the right people in place at the commission to do it, and to do it well. Speaking of thorny problems, talk a little bit about what's now the largest source of climate pollution, the transportation sector. We all know the public transit system is about to go off a fiscal cliff in 2025. What do you think should happen? How are you thinking about it?
Well, it's not going to go off the fiscal cliff. I mean, that we are, you know, that people talk about the fiscal cliff. We absolutely are going to have to make investments, and they're unprecedented in size. But we've worked through, you know, every problem. Remember, I have not had a single year in office, and I'm looking at the legislators here. We have not had a single year in office since I took office where we haven't had a pretty major crisis going on, right? My first year, it was a fiscal crisis we inherited. My second year, it was COVID. My third year, it was COVID. You know, the fourth year, it was the you know, terrible policies of the Republicans and the Republican governor of Texas to shove people onto buses and just send them places without any planning, without any notice, and so on, right? And so we've had people, you know, rightly have said it's been a crisis, but it's a crisis of someone else's making that we have to deal with. So, yes, a crisis. So, you know,
You mean it's not like college where you get an easy semester?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't remember an easy time anytime in the last 5 years. So, you know, we have a lot to overcome. You know, you mentioned the transportation, cliff, but it's a transit cliff. At the same time, we're managing through a transition of ICE vehicles to EVs. I'm not trying to throw everybody on the road, but I'm just saying, we've got a lot going on that is costly, but has long-term benefit. We're making investments for long-term benefit. And we ought to have the best transit system in the world in Chicago. And we should encourage people to use the system, and we have to tackle all of the issues that we're facing today. And it isn't just a money issue, it's a focus on each of the problems that they're facing. And again, I think it's a project. Some legislators put forward a plan or a bill to consolidate all of the transit agencies. That 100% might be the answer, but there hasn't been a ton of discussion about what that would do to each of those agencies and the services that they provide. I think we all understand that consolidation can save money, and if you have better management or more focus from the top on what needs to be managed, that would be better. But we don't have a comprehensive plan yet, and I think that's not anybody's failure. It's just we need to get those plans from the three major agencies, and then we also need to be contemplating what I think are new ideas for what does transit look like in 10 years and 15 years, and making those investments. And then, honestly, we all should be talking to Washington, because this is not a unique problem to Chicago. It's a problem that exists in every major metropolitan area of the country that has significant public transit, and they need to help, because this was a federal problem, not necessarily of the federal government's making, but it's a federal problem. It needs to have partially a federal answer.
Let me ask you one last question, because I know your time is valuable and you need to get going, and your good staff is saying we need to wrap it up.
They are? Well,
okay. Lake Michigan, when you get together with the governors of the Great Lakes states and the Canadian premiers, what's top of the list? Invasives,
yeah,
ARP?
I want to tell you a funny
funding.
story. When I was governor-elect, and there were a bunch of other governors-elect in 2018, going into 2019, because it was a transformative year in a way. And so we got invited to, the governors-elect got invited to the White House, to the Trump White House. For about 2 minutes, I thought about not going, because I had spent every day on the campaign trail for a year and a half, starting every stump speech with everything we care about is under siege by a racist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic president in Washington, D.C., and his local silent partner. And that's how I began, almost every speech. And I thought, it would be hypocritical for me now to go to the White House of this guy. But 2 minutes, I got over it, because, of course, he's the president of the United States, and I'm governor of one of the most important states, well, the most important state, but so I went. And we had meetings with, it's a great story if you want to hear the rest of it sometime, but I won't tell you about that part. We had meetings with all the cabinet members and so on. And then at the end, there was a meeting with President Trump, and it was in the cabinet room. And we sat down with the president. By the way, I may... So there were a lot of people in the room, as you can imagine. There were a lot of new governors, a bunch of Republicans. It turns out I was seated next to Ron DeSantis. Didn't really know him at all then. Feel like I know him now. But on the other side of Ron DeSantis sat President Trump, and he started the meeting. After he said a few things that were inconsequential, he said, "Okay, what should we talk about?" And he called on me. And to start, so and I got a lot I want to say to the president. But I said, well, you know, what we need is infrastructure dollars, because we didn't have an infrastructure bill, and he had kept saying infrastructure. And I said, you know, we really need your help. And, you know, and he gave his blather answer to that. So that was my topic. Then he went to Gretchen Whitmer. I love Gretchen Whitmer, by the way. I mean, she's really a good friend. And she said, Asian carp. Which I was like, oh, I'm in love. Like, just terrific. And he said, what's that? And then she began to explain invasive species and so on, and, you know, they're coming up the river and we've got to stop them and so on. And he said, well, why don't we, you know, I have an idea. Why don't we just put some nets up? That will stop them. We'll just put a bunch of nets. And she said, well, Mr. President, you know, it's slightly more complicated than that. But, you know, appreciate your idea. We'll look into that, you know. And anyway, so I mentioned it partly to tell you a funny story about Asian carp, but also to tell, I mean, Tim Walz, Gretchen Whitmer, Tony Evers, terrific partners. You know, if you think about elect, you know, how important it is to elect good people to public office. These are great people. We all got elected exactly at the same time. And thank God Tony Evers, you know, he's got the toughest of the three situations, and he's been amazing. You know, sometimes people don't think he's, you know, the biggest personality in the room, but he gets things done in an environment where you've got a lot of Republicans fighting against you. And so I'm an admirer of his. But we are good friends, all four of us. We talked all the way through COVID regularly. We talk about what we're going to do to deal with the Asian carp challenge. You know, and we're on the verge of having a solution, as some of you may know, and we're going to get something done. But it's in part because we work so well together that we will get things done. And that, I think, is maybe the last thing I want to say to all of you. But you have elected great people to our legislature. I'm pointing at the two I can see. Are there others other than Senator Collins? Oh, yeah, right. Marcus Evans, right? Juan Nguyen is here. Thank you. And I just want you to know we have great leaders. Is there somebody else that I missed? Anyway, we have great leaders in these folks. We don't get things done in Springfield unless we work together. And the same thing is true about the governors, but who you all help elect here in Illinois and across the country makes a huge difference, because there are people that won't answer my calls. Or, you know, I'm not talking about in Illinois. Well, it's true in Illinois, too. Yeah, it turns out Darren Bailey does not answer my calls. But he's out of the legislature now. But you know, I'm just saying how you vote matters, and having great people here in Illinois means we are a leader on these issues, and that we listen to ELPC, and your support of ELPC helps us do the right thing for the state of Illinois.
Thank you, Governor. And that's how we get to stay on Plan A. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for everything you've done. And thank you for what you are going to be doing. Please let us know how we, and when I mean we, I mean not just the ELPC, the executive directors of most of the environmental groups in Illinois are in the room today. Tell us what we can do to be helpful and advance an agenda together that gets things done in Illinois. All right? Thank you.
You're the governor.
All right. What an amazing conversation. Now you know that organizations like ELPC do not exist without resources. So I'm going to make a plea to you. We've raised $370,000 already tonight, but this is your chance to make a contribution very simply. It's very simple. All you have to do is on your phone, your smartphone, you have to text to ELPC. Hang on. 44321. Okay, text ELPC to 44321. And if you're an older person like myself that didn't know actually how to do that, you just open up your text messages. Okay, you're going to need a credit card if it isn't already loaded on your phone. You're going to need a credit card. Go to open your text message, and the number you type in, like your wife or your spouse's number, is 44321, and the message is ELPC for Environmental Law and Policy Center. So whatever you're thinking about, if you could add another 0 to it, that would be much appreciated. If you can't see your way to adding another 0 to it, maybe you could triple it. If you couldn't do that, maybe you could double it. But reach into your pockets, reach into your phones, and text 44321 to ELPC. What? All right, now it's time to party and enjoy all of the amazing people who are here. And thank you again to all of our sponsors so much.